Hi, everyone, and welcome to Keys to Real Estate. I'm your host, Mary Schuster. Our guest today is here to help you be less overwhelmed with what to ask, what to understand, and what to do when protecting the value of certain assets that are vital to your business, your information assets. We invited him on to the show today because so many of you wish you could raise the white flag and just sit down and talk with an actual human about how to be practical with regard to these issues. Kevin Nincehelser, the COO of Premier One, is here. And one of my favorite things about Kevin is that he meets these topics halfway in between the generic advice of don't fall prey to email phishing attempts on the one hand, and on the other hand, the too nerdy for most of us mere mortals to understand the jargon of some IT professionals. Kevin's going to meet us in the middle to help us simply and responsibly do the best we can. So if you're listening while on the go, that's great. But I hope you'll also make a point to go back and jot down a few of the specific tactics Kevin recommends. Because while there is no perfectly secure system, there are incremental changes you can make without breaking your budget to help you stay safe and protected. He also shares a couple of game-changing analogies that will help you and your staff think about IT and safety in very practical terms. So if you feel like the world is full of too many IT folks that maybe Dr. knows, please enjoy my conversation with someone I tend to think of as Dr. Yes and, the insightful, approachable, and helpful Kevin Nincehelser. The presenting sponsor of the Keys to Real Estate podcast is RamQuest. RamQuest fosters a customer-first culture built around an unwavering commitment to provide solutions that don't just meet, but exceed expectations. RamQuest's newest title and settlement production solution, Horizon, delivers unparalleled efficiency, robust features, and scalability to ensure you have tools to boost productivity and elevate performance like never before. Horizon streamlines your operation with secure 24/7 access, automatic updates, and all the power that only the cloud can offer. Plus, Horizon offers a direct connection to the industry's most extensive network of service providers and partners. Experience Horizon for yourself when you visit ramquest.com. And now, please enjoy the show. Kevin, thanks so much for joining us today. We're thrilled to have you.
Glad to be here. Thanks, Mary.
Well, one of the reasons that I wanted to get you on so early in our first season is that people are having so much turmoil out there trying to stay safe, but they're not particularly well versed in what to protect themselves from or even what questions to ask the professionals that work with them, trying to keep them safe. And you're not only a technical person, but you're also a COO who runs a business. And so I'm really looking forward to you bringing some of the practical aspects and things to consider for that business approach to help some of our folks start to understand some more of how they can protect themselves, what conversations they need to be having, and even just how to look and think about things. Fair enough?
Yeah, that sounds great. Security and practicality go hand in hand. So looking forward to that discussion.
They sure do. Well, I wanted to start off by asking you about kind of what's going on currently, sort of the latest in IT strategies and trends going on in the industry. Let's start with kind of an overview of what's news right now.
What's new? Well, the only thing that's constant is change. Certainly, artificial intelligence has a very disruptive impact in everything technology right now. From a security perspective, in terms of efficiency, creativity, content generation, there's so many aspects that touches. There's really a major revolution going on in that. Security has continued to change rapidly. The target is constantly moving. And so as soon as we figure out how to deal with something, then we have to move on and figure out the next thing. Those are some areas that are a clear focus for us in our daily life in the IT world, and certainly within the industry we support in title insurance.
Yes, you're right. It is ever evolving, and it's not as if they entirely move on from one threat. We still have a lot of the legacy threats, including good old fashioned check theft and mail fraud. I have such sympathy for anybody trying to run a business out there because you can't stop focusing on all those old things and only focus on the new things. It's ever accumulative, and I think people start to get very stressed out and frustrated. And we hear from a lot of companies who just say, I, I don't know what to do. I just throw up my hands because it seems like so much. It seems like too much.
Yeah, and the way I try and characterize it is that you have a place that you need to keep secure, and it has front doors, it has side doors, and it has back doors. So you have to ensure that you're securing all of those, but it takes different mechanisms to secure those. So certainly a big area of concern and focus for us is the front door, which is those open systems that you use to transact. Microsoft 365 being very primary in that. Side doors are things, for instance, services that you're using out on the internet that you might be uploading or downloading data to, that might have credentials that you use or maybe even share. Do you have multi-factor authentication implemented on all of those various side doors or windows? And then in terms of the back doors, those are the things that really have not changed much. Are your systems secure from infiltration in the areas that you don't see every day, right? Are your servers and endpoints properly protected, or are those gaps closed, and are you ensuring that only authorized access is allowed?
Yeah, and that last group certainly is highly technical and may not feel as approachable. So having somebody that you know has your back on that is you've almost probably got to take that a little bit for granted. Although so many times we hear, "Oh, we thought we had all those back doors nailed down. I thought our team did," and then we only knew that one wasn't secure when we had an incident. So that's really hard from a business owner's perspective who is not that technical expert to say, look at, endpoints and firewall, all those
Mhm.
things. That's the hard part, I would imagine.
It certainly is the hardest, and also sometimes the most challenging to explain or understand the value of, right? And so what I suggest there is just trust but verify. Make sure that you are investing in security in those backdoor areas, but then also just ask for verification that that's happening. Backups is an excellent, very tangible example of that. Everyone says they have backups. Half of people don't. And so the best thing you can do is, number one, ensure that you are investing in a backup solution. And number two, ensure that you are receiving confirmation and reporting and testing that those backups are active and working. And that applies to other aspects of your data and infrastructure as well.
And if you aren't sure what to ask or how to trust but verify, is that something that a third party audit can give you a report card on? How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. There are lots of different ways you can go about getting that information. Certainly, you want to start with your existing partners. So, if you have a partner that you're working with or a trusted partner that you know, perhaps someone that your peers are working with that has that capability, start with them and just find what you can find without having to spend a bunch of money. Then from that, you can take it to the next level and say, okay, maybe this information is not trustworthy, or it's not good enough for me to feel secure as the business owner or the operator. Then you go to a third party, someone who does not have a conflict of interest of any kind, and say, give us a window into this that we wouldn't have otherwise. Typically that there's some investment involved in that, but lots of opportunities out there to trust, but then secondly, using third parties to verify that. Absolutely.
Well, I guarantee you, everybody, whether you have an IT staff or an IT person, has a list of things that they have requested or recommended be replaced that for budgetary considerations have been told no or not yet. And what we find a lot of times is that when the equipment was requisitioned or recommended, IT tends to talk about, well, this is why we need this operationally, or they may just simply say it's come out of warranty. And as an owner or a COO, I don't know what that means. So if you're not telling me it's business critical for today, I'm not going to authorize the expenditure. But a lot of times the risk piece of it and the security aspect is not factored into that presentation. And if it were, a lot of times that COO or GM wouldn't say no, but they just don't understand the risk. Do you see that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's an area where IT people are the same as anyone else. We have lots of folks who are trying to sell us security solutions. You can throw a rock and hit 10 of them. So, how do we understand and discern what is the best bang for our buck? If you have a fixed budget to spend on IT, how do you most appropriately allocate that? And that is a critical and important question. Nobody has an unlimited budget for security. The approach that is appropriate in that area is to use a security framework, not simply to rely on who's the best at sales or what this person says or that person says, but what is a framework that rises above all of those different talking heads and really says, here are the priorities based on data. I think that's the key, is to use a framework. Certainly, we recommend as a default the CIS Critical Security Controls version 8. But essentially, it comes down to know what you have, know who has access to it, and understand your process and tools that you have available to secure it.
All right, I want to come back to those middle doors now, those side doors in your analogy, because I love that analogy. It really framed up the thought. I noticed you said having MFA, multi-factor authentication, turned on for every piece of software and platform that you can get it turned on for. Because I think a lot of people say, oh, I have MFA when we log into our system in the morning, so we're good to go.
That's a great point. So I think that just like anything else in security, change has been very rapid, even in the past couple of years. And so I remember not too long ago, companies considering multi-factor authentication, even for core or critical systems, as optional. And what we know now today is that that is absolutely not optional for core or critical systems. But continuing down that path, it's not optional for non-core or systems that are less critical. Everything is intertwined. I would say that multi-factor authentication protects us, particularly in a world where identity security is more prominent than perimeter security. And what I mean by that is it's not simply ensuring that, in this analogy of a household, that your windows and doors are locked, but also that you understand who is going in and out of them. When we talk about identity security, that's where multi-factor authentication really hits its stride and is so critical. You may be adding windows and doors to this household all the time. Every time you sign up for a new service online for your business, which has probably happened for everyone listening in the past month or two, right? Mm-hmm. It's constant. You look at the data on the average number of just online accounts that any individual holds, it's in the hundreds. Of all of those, how many have you secured with multi-factor authentication? And really the question there is simply, how many have you used tools to verify that who's going in and out is who they say they are? So when it comes to multi-factor, it's not optional anywhere if your objective is to stay secure.
Well, and I didn't have mind to ask you this, but what you just said made me think of recently at our NS3 conference. Someone made, I thought, a very good point, but now I want to check with you about it. They said, okay, and you can have everything in place with regard to your business. Your doors are as locked as they can be, but you still need coming and going, and so you need to know who's coming and going through there. It makes total sense, and you can be doing a great job with that with your business. And then your employees come through with their own devices and they're dragging through your network, and that can undo a lot of your lockdown. Do you guys see that as being a problem or not so much?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the concept of bring your own device was not an optional concept when COVID hit and everybody had to start working from home. Nobody had the equipment. Nobody was prepared for that. And so everyone did what they had to do. Prior to that, there was a lot of debate about should we do bring your own device? Should we do company issued devices? What about smartphones versus, endpoints, laptops, PCs, that kind of thing? So all of that conversation was happening, and then boom, suddenly everybody just had to put up or shut up and do it.
Mhm.
Now, fast forward to today, we've had time to catch up with that. That doesn't mean that everyone has, but at least there's been time to do that. Bring your own device poses a lot of significant risks and variability to organizations when it comes to security. To that end, in our view, there are specific use cases where bring your own device can make sense, either from a temporary perspective or from a limited use perspective. But in terms of full use or permanent use, bring your own device often does not have more benefit than it has risk. And so when I say limited use, I mean typically there's not a significant reason for people to carry around two smartphones, one company issued, one personal. There are reasonable ways to secure the company data on that device and keep it separate and segregated from the personal activity on that device. And that makes sense for mobile devices. When it comes to endpoints,
Yeah.
it's difficult to do that and do it successful's from a security
Well,
standpoint.
and one of the things that the expert that shared this information from the stage said was, there's tools that you're employing for your business already that you might consider branching out and offering to those employees on their devices. Not that nothing's a silver bullet, but just something as simple as password manager or something a tool that you tend to use in your business. Maybe offer that to your employees and mitigate that risk down to the degree you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think operationally there are some major challenges with that. So what we just see in real life application is that anything you do to deploy security on a personally owned device will naturally limit the use of that device in ways that will prevent it from being used for personal use. One of if you consider some of the most major ways that a device or a user account can be compromised, it's typically web browsing and email, right? So if you implement restrictions on personal devices that limit web browsing, which people are going to want to do what they want on
Sure.
those devices if they own them, and clicking links in emails, it just creates very practical problems for the owners of that device, who in this case are not the company. So yeah, that's where we see the conflict.
Oh, got it. That makes complete sense.
But I guess I would add to that,
Yes.
any security is better than no security.
Correct.
So if, temporary situation or some circumstance dictates that you do have to use a bring your own device policy, ultimately anything you can do to secure that device is worthwhile.
Fair enough. Support for today's episode is provided by October Research. October Research provides national coverage of case law, news, regulatory updates, and competitive business strategies critical for sustaining an innovative and compliant real estate business operation. Our portfolio publications offer independent and unbiased information that helps you stay educated and informed on what matters most to your business. So visit octoberresearch.com to learn more about our portfolio of real estate publications, sign up for free email news, educational webinars, and premier industry events for thought leaders. Knowledge, the competitive advantage. If we could, I'd like to kind of pivot over and talk about AI, the application of it in business. Everybody's heard AI's coming, it's going to change everything. It's coming. We don't hear a lot yet about, although I think we're kind of on the front end of people actually putting it into use in their operations. So I'd kind of like to talk through some of the good, the bad, and the ugly, or the opportunities that exist today, and then maybe some of the flip side of things that we also need to discover. So I'm going to follow you on this one because I'm learning about AI just like everybody else is.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's the first and most important point, is that nobody's an expert. As soon as someone says they're unless they actually created the AI system, maybe then they're an expert. But the vast majority of the population is not yet. So the way I like to frame this is it's important to talk about it practically instead of just high level, but you also have to understand it at a high level. So
Right.
I like to start by just explaining what it is that we can expect
Okay.
in terms of change, and then move into a discussion about how can we apply ourselves today to that purpose, right?
Okay.
So
Good.
when we talk about AI at a high level, I like to talk about it as it's really a disruptive technology or a disruptive innovation, right? So we can look at models from history as in terms of other disruptive innovations and technologies that have changed the world, and there are many of them. You can go back to the invention of firearms or the printing press or the telephone, airplanes, and even more modern, the personal computer, the internet, smartphones, right? So all of these are at the beginning were not widely adopted, but quickly as as they became adopted, folks started to realize the power that they contain. And so I would absolutely characterize this AI boom as something along those lines, right? So this is extremely disruptive, and we are in the transition period
Mm-hmm.
between two worlds: the world without significant AI presence, and the world where suddenly everyone has access to it at the same time. That's one big difference between previous disruptive technologies and this one, though. A lot of those, the world had lots of time to absorb that change. They required telephone lines and installation of hard technologies and assets. Smartphones were created, but were iterated over time to become more helpful and more valuable, and other technologies came along with it.
Mm-hmm.
AI is unprecedented in that some of these technologies and tools have been created, have suddenly been available to everyone in a matter of months. And so the ability for us as humans to change and adapt to that is also then unprecedented. We have to do it faster than we ever have. That's how I tee up AI and the understanding of how is it going to impact us at a high level. Number one, it is. It continues to, and it will only get greater.
And a distinguishing, sorry, I need you to bring me along on this
Sure, sure.
because we're all trying to figure it out. But a distinguishing characteristic for me so far with this AI is so you have a group, and I was a pretty early adopter of the LLMs, the Chat GPT and those, meaning I went out, created an account, and started playing with it.
Mhm.
And that was a little over a year ago, I guess. But what I find today is I'm interacting with all of these that I did not go out and intentionally adopt. They're just being pushed into things I already interact with without my saying, yes, let's go. So I'm not prepared for it. I don't understand what to make of it. And that's an aspect too that I don't think we're talking about enough with regard to. It's not, you don't necessarily get to raise your hand and pick when to opt in this.
Right. In terms of practical application, like what can a single person or what can a group of people or a business do
Mm-hmm.
about this technology that is about to change their business or their
Mm-hmm.
lives in some way?
Mm-hmm.
Number one is start using it, like you said. Don't hold it at arm's length or avoid it or say, well, we're going to wait until it's more mature before we start to adopt it. Understanding how to utilize the technology, and also understanding the pros and cons, the threats and the opportunities that it poses. It's critical to start that learning now, not a year down the road, because your competitors, others out there, in terms of security, other countries who want to steal or access or threaten your data or your livelihood, they're working on it. Everyone has access to it. It's an equal opportunity threat and opportunity. I think a huge implication of all this technology is around data value and data privacy. So, like you said, these technologies are being pushed into the services that we are already using. Why? Because the more they're used, the more valuable these technologies become. Right at the core of this AI technology is the undeniable fact that the more usage it gets, the better it becomes. And so the big players in the industry who are creating these models have to get early high volume usage of those tools so that they can continue to iterate and improve and grow. You can see, from a high level, some of the big players. ChatGPT was first to market, got the most usage and volume instantly. Google and Microsoft came in closely thereafter and started building user subscriptions around theirs. And the reason being that they need people like you and me and businesses to be using these so that they can iterate them and improve them as fast as their competitors. There's a real arms race going on in terms of the AI models today as a result. And how does that apply to our data security? Well, anything you put out there, anything that you are using these for, rest assured that these companies are using that not necessarily to steal your data. They don't care about the answers to the questions you're asking at an individual level. But what they do care about is training their models to get better. And they will use every keystroke and every document that you upload in order to accomplish that purpose. Uh, and and that doesn't mean that we avoid it, but that means that we do have to be hyper aware of how we're using it and put up guardrails now as we start to learn these technologies to use it well.
Had an experience somewhat recently with a group, an organization that meets routinely and discusses businessy type things. And someone decided it would be nice to put an automatic note taker into every meeting so that we would all have a transcript and it would be available if somebody couldn't attend. And that was great. And then that asked, if you like this service, it's so handy, why not embed it with your Outlook calendar and we'll just note take and record every meeting you're in. And it really took some understanding to figure out what was going on. I had somebody ask me just a couple of weeks ago, did you know that Zoom, for example, is recording everything you're doing and sending it somewhere to analyze about something? And the degree to which I think your average person that's just trying to get through their life every day doesn't understand that the both sides of that coin, exceedingly helpful. But yes, what all are you saying yes to?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and I think there are really two questions there. Do you understand and do you care? Right.
Right.
And that's a very different question for personal use versus a business or a business owner. So, I've grown up in a world since I had my first smartphone. I've known that the things that I'm doing online have the ability to be tracked and to be monitored and to be used in whatever purpose for the
Monetized.
for the
Yep.
purpose. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
There's all a dollar figure on everyone's head when it comes to our data.
you bet.
Um, yeah, and some is more valuable than others, right?
Mhm.
Um, you absolutely cannot take the same approach when it comes to a business. There are very different and very real considerations that don't matter on a personal level. For instance, if you have a Gmail account, all of that data is being used. It's free for a reason, right? It's being monetized in some form or fashion. You have a Facebook account, any consumer level um, service like that. Um, One of the keys to kind of AI in the future is that data, uh, pre AI world, data was in some ways a burden. It's expensive to hoard data and to collect it and catalog it and index it and all that stuff. A huge change or a shift in that concept comes with AI because now data is power. When we talked about these large language models and how everyone suddenly has access to them, the reason that's so powerful for everyone is that now we have been able to collect all of documented human data on the internet and give people the ability to access that and use it for whatever purpose they want instantly. Um, when we talk about the power of data, though, what data is out there that is not on the internet? There's tons of data out there that's not on the internet. In fact, if you consider the big players in AI, right? You got Microsoft, Google, ChatGPT, um, Amazon, right? Interestingly, they're also the ones that are hosting public cloud infrastructure. Well, why are they doing that? Because they're also using it for their own business because they have so much data that they need to store and process and utilize to become more effective. And so it just lines up with their strategy of their business model. So what does that mean for us, right? Private data becomes extremely far more valuable with the application of AI, especially if you keep it private.
If you can keep it private.
Um,
Yeah. Let's say
if it
more
is
about that.
public, then you lose the power of that data. And so that's really the other practical application I can point to, aside from just starting to use these AI tools and familiarize yourself with them and train yourself and your employees to understand how they work, just like email, right? Like, how does it work? How do you know not to click on links? How do you know how to send an email? All that stuff we had to learn years ago. Same thing with AI. But secondly, and I think this is really important when it comes to data and data privacy, you got to start working now on pulling your data together, cleaning it, and then creating good new data, right? So gone are the days where you can just throw everything in a bunch of file cabinets and folders. I remember that was title when I started in this space, is basements full of file cabinets, well organized but a little dusty. Um, now you can throw all of those documents together, and you have this automated librarian who can read them all, index them all, and answer any questions you have about anything in that documentation. But if everyone else can ask the same questions of that data, then it's not valuable.
Or if you're paying somebody to take the ownership of that data from you, although they're allowing you to transact with it and you're building up their data set as you wouldn't take to your point about the physical title plant and back files, you wouldn't take them and lay them out in the street. You wouldn't post them up in your shop window even. But if you're not careful with some of the partners who are helping you get things done, even, you can be accidentally paying somebody to take those files from you and you don't own them anymore.
Sure. Which when you're talking about for personal use, you're using Google Drive, you put your documents out there, you just accept that risk, right? But when it comes to business where your data is an asset, it's a part of the value of your business, you have to have a more sophisticated understanding of that. And it's not just service providers, right? So there are tons of services you can sign up for, which immediately you give them access to your email inbox or your calendar or your contacts. There's so many different data points that you can farm out. But also when we talk about security, as soon as an attacker or an unauthorized person has access to that data, they understand the value of that. And so as soon as that leaves your organization or is exfiltrated, then it's public, right? You can assume that it's public, and that has so many implications, not just from well, now my data is less valuable because others have access to it. That's important, but also that data has significant risk, right? There's lots of it can be classified information or non-public information, and we're seeing headwinds in terms of government and their regulations around that, just like we are in the private and commercial sectors. So it's critical to protect that data from the outside and from the inside.
Yeah, good. Well, I could spend all day talking about that, but I'll not keep you in that cul-de-sac too long because there's a lot to talk about there. Microsoft 365. A lot of people have some questions about the best way to secure that. Some good best practices, good questions to ask. What do you think about that?
Sure. Well, I think just like everything else, that technology has changed rapidly, right? So it used to just be that's our email system. Now it's your data storage system. It's how you facilitate internal and external communications. You might be sending and receiving sensitive data, classified data, non-public data, all through that platform. And you might be storing it there, right? Uh, Something that I think a lot of people don't realize is that that is also being used as your primary identity. So when we talk about, a social security number, that is, for all intents and purposes, your identity as a person in this country, right? When we talk about digital identities, uh, for most business folks, for the vast majority of businesses using Microsoft 365, that account is your primary identity. It is your digital version of your social security number. And nevertheless, even though it's that important, it's like you take that social security number and you tape it on your chest as your like name tag, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're putting your email out there for anyone. And if someone gets access to that, they have access to your data, your contacts, your emails, sometimes your phone system. Um, Being the core of your identity, you use that email address and maybe that password. Maybe you're using single sign-on technology to log into other accounts too. So what else do you sign into with your Microsoft 365 account? Maybe you're signing into your CRM. Maybe you're using that to sign into your production platform. So all of those things really roll up to identity security, and for most businesses, that's around Microsoft 365. So that's the criticality of it, is that it's not just email, it's your identity, and so it's got to be secure.
Oh, that's the perfect analogy of that social security number. And I'd never thought about it like that. Thank you. That's so useful because I won't vouch for you, but I will say I'm enough of an age that, I mean, your social security number used to be printed on everything. It was on your driver's license, on your student ID. You got nothing of putting it on a form. And eventually it came to, well, I don't know if I feel good about this, but everybody was still asking for it. And now we're in, completely the opposite world. And so that evolution of that Microsoft 365, that's a perfect analogy. Thank you.
Well, and I always, a lot of times when I'm doing a presentation, I'll ask the question, what would you rather give to a bad guy? Your social security number or the password to your email account? Hard question. I mean, I know the answer very clearly for me. Um, in the digital age today, your digital identity is far more powerful and has larger implications than your social security number. And that's a huge mind shift, because it's changed so quickly. 10 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, that was not the case. So when that is why it's so critical, specifically to secure Microsoft 365. Number one, because it's identity. It is your identity. Mm-hmm. Number two, it's an open system. So not only is it critical to your online identity, but anyone can send anything to it, right? This is why the majority of successful attacks, wire fraud, everything, it's all around email security and security of Microsoft 365 and identity. So we call that the front door. In that analogy we used at the beginning, you got the side doors, you got the back doors. There are more and more of those every day. But most importantly, you have your front door locked, and are you verifying who's going in and out of it? And then once they're in, are you letting them in the entryway, or are you letting them in the whole house? You can take that analogy so many
because once they're in that front door, they can go anywhere. You don't have to worry about somebody clicking on the wrong link in an email. It's just Katie bar at the door. Here we go.
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, back to practical application. What can you do about that? If you consider that, yes, that is important. Kind of like it is your identity. It is important. I believe it is very important. Then what do you do about it? First stop is free. Every Microsoft 365 tenant has a feature called Microsoft Secure Score. We preach this all the time. It doesn't cost you anything to get to it. Typically, only administrators can get to that. So it's not just every person in your organization can see it, but it's just built into Microsoft 365. It is a standard that Microsoft has provided to all of its clients on Microsoft 365 Business that says, here are the security tools that you have access to in here. Here are the ones that are turned on or not turned on. And then it gives you a score and basically says, here's how secure you are or not based on Microsoft's measurement. Now, Microsoft's measurement is a very potent measurement considering they have access to maybe more data than anyone else in the world. So it's built in, doesn't cost anything. You can easily navigate to it if you are an administrator of your Microsoft 365 account. If you're not, it's easy for your administrator to get to and provide information about. And then it also gives you the ability, like it tells you how to implement that security. So it's absolutely the first stop. It doesn't cost anything. You don't have to buy anything, but you'll find significant areas for improvement right out of the gate.
That's a great tip. Thank you. All right, you've just, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this in a not truly organized way, and you're just bringing so many concepts together into it, clarity and action. So I'm grateful for that, because so many times, again, like we said at the top, people know they should have anxiety about it. They know there's things they should be asking and doing, and they have no idea what those are. So this has been fantastic. I will have one more to ask you about if I can keep you just a little bit more. So you mentioned COVID, and that people just all of a sudden had to have a remote workforce, and we figured it out and we got it done, or at least a hybrid workforce. And we kind of did the down and dirty and turned things on, and there it kind of sits. And so as people have started trying to adjust from this ad hoc thing to design, what are some of the gaps that you're finding, and how do we close some of those up?
There will always be gaps.
Okay.
Is the first answer.
Okay.
And there are a lot of them. Some will be known and some are unknown.
Okay.
So first stop is to accept the practical truth that there are going to be security gaps that are unavoidable or unknown, and you have to be prepared to deal with that reality. That's where reactive technologies are so critical. So in talking about Microsoft 365, secure the front door as best you can, but also have a system in place so that if it's breached or if a bad thing happens, there are systems in place to stop that immediately and to clean up the mess. So I think there are reactive security technologies out there that were optional even a year ago or considered optional that today everyone really must have, because like you said, there are gaps that will go unaddressed either due to negligence or just capability or budget or all those different reasons. But then secondly, for those gaps that you do want to close, you have to prioritize them, right? So you can spend 90% of your budget prioritizing the bottom 10% of those gaps that really have no impact. An example is, are you implementing full disk encryption on your servers? Yes, it's an important security mechanism. Is that what's going to prevent the next wire fraud incident? Absolutely not. And so we just recommend a data-driven approach to those decisions. Use a security framework like Critical Security Controls version 8 if you need a place to start. But just in terms of the data, practically we know that most of what happens that's bad, particularly in our industry, revolves around number one, email. That's an open system. That's where the links come. That's, you've got other parties in that transaction whose emails are out of your control and maybe compromised. So number one is email. Number two is identity, making sure that who is coming and going is confirmed, and that you have multi-factor and other ways to secure that your employees' identities. And then number three is web browsing. So yeah, in terms of the data, and there's tons of third-party data. Verizon publishes a thing every year that that segregates it by industry, and so we can see specifically within real estate, the data shows it's email, it's identity, it's web browsing. Those are, practically speaking, the best places you can start in terms of investing in security.
That's wonderful. That's a good tip. Well, and I love how a lot of this conversation has helped us really stop and think about how interconnected it all is, because you tend to take on a new piece of technology discreetly, and then over time it gets more interconnected. And I don't know if this is true or not, but the fact that it was even feasible kind of helped me start rethinking things a different way. That I heard when there was a large breach incident recently, malware, blah, 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 that the hackers sat and listened to the conversation that was going on in the boardroom with employees and remote board members out. They were on their cell phones, but it was on a speakerphone in the boardroom, and the hacker sat and listened to the board discuss whether or not to pay ransomware.
Mm.
And that, as soon as you realize they don't just have your data, they're in your house now, and they're anywhere they want to go. That one really helped me reframe it, and you don't seem shocked at all.
No, and that's like I said, there are gaps that we don't even know about, right? Statistically speaking, if you raise your hand and say, "Hey, we are completely secure," you're probably wrong, just in terms of the data. So we have to accept the reality that nobody, our vendors, our third party, partners, our consultants, ourselves, nobody is 100% secure. That is a target that cannot and will not be reached. So understand.
And I think it's worth noting too that you can go broke trying.
Oh yeah.
Like, to your earlier point, you have to pick the biggest bang for the smartest buck. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where security sales comes in and ruins things sometimes, because everyone wants to sell you the next security product. So just frame that, post that alongside your priority list of what will have the most impact. Secure Microsoft 365. Have a security operations center service that is watching logins and logouts and locations and able to stop things that look bad. Like that, if you do nothing else, that is the best place to start.
I love it. Well, thank you. I know everybody's sort of been collectively breathing into a brown paper bag, knowing that everybody just feels like sitting ducks, and with some of the breaches that have happened recently in our industry, and they obviously hit big players, large, robust, beefy underwriters who have comparatively all the money in the world and all the systems. And I can't tell you, Kevin, how many smaller agents I heard from, and you probably did too, that just they went from trying to do their best at scale to, hey, if they're not safe, there's no way I'm safe. So, and that's not I understand the sentiment, the frustration, but we can't go that direction. We just have to keep moving the needle forward.
Right. It's hard to accept the idea that we can't be 100% secure. That was a fallacy to begin with, but now it's reality that we understand that. So where do we go from here? We make plans so that we understand what actions we can take and what will happen if there's a security issue for our business. And that's the best thing you can do is invest in the things that have the most value, secure the things that have the most value for your business, and then just be prepared to take action quickly and appropriately to keep the trust in your organization that you need.
Thank you for this pragmatic discussion. I know people have taken a to-do list away from it, and that in and of itself is a high value, Kevin. We appreciate you.
Great. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Kevin, for sharing some practical steps for us to take on this ever-evolving journey. We appreciate you throwing us a lifeline. Now, audience, should you like to continue the conversation with Kevin? His email address is linked in today's show notes. It seems you can never have too many smart people in your Rolodex to call upon, and we hope our guests can help round out your cabinet of experts. So thank you for joining us today. We'll keep bringing the guests and topics that help you successfully hold your keys to real estate. And until next time, I'm Mary Schuster for October Research, where knowledge is the competitive advantage.